Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. I welcome you to another live session of Meaningful Live. Today's July 4th, Independence Day, so I thought it appropriate to speak about that. 245 years ago, the year 1776, this country, the United States of America, declared its independence from the Commonwealth of Great Britain, King George, and from then began a new journey, a new republic called the United States. Interesting to note, just to put things into context, among the founding fathers, of course, we had many giants. Two particular that stand out are John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the second and third respectively presidents of the United States. And they both actually died on July 4th, 50 years from when the Republic began, which would be July 4th, 1826. 1826, right. So 50, the same day, 5 hours apart. They were good friends for many years, then they became adversaries, then they reconciled. One of the key differences, one of the key things that broke them apart was their position on freedom, actually, and independence. It was when the French Revolution happened, and Jefferson was very big proponent of the French Revolution, and Adams was not. Adams claimed it would lead to tyranny and anarchy because he felt that the freedom, independence, was not based on faith and values. It was just based on man-made power. Whereas Jefferson felt otherwise. Now, it turned out that Adams was right. So it's an interesting contrast between the independence that the Europeans experienced and the independence that the Americans experienced. And this has already been documented. But one of the key differences, independence, is, everyone agrees, is a blessing. Not to be subjugated to someone else, not someone else controlling your life, but you control your decisions and the civil rights that every human being deserves and should deserve. So generally speaking, independence is a great thing. Before the United States, there was no concept of independence. Monarchs ruled, tyrants ruled. Sometimes it was benevolent despots that ruled. But people did not have that freedom of just choosing. That idea of the Bill of Rights, they have the right of expression, the freedom of religion, freedom of expression, the freedom of assembly, freedom for free press, was non-existent. So we all agree that independence was a major step forward in human progress. But the thing with independence, as Adams accurately pointed out, is once you are free, and especially once you prosper and you're successful, Adams wrote, what will guarantee that virtue will be maintained? Now, I'm not suggesting that monarchs who ruled there was virtue necessarily, but there wasn't the anarchy that can happen when people just can do whatever they want. So with all the blessings of that type of freedom comes also a great challenge. What will uphold the higher standards and virtues? And this is what concerned John Adams as well as other thinkers at the time, which is why they felt that the key thing to keep the controls, that people just don't do whatever they wish, which can end up becoming anarchy or end up becoming survival of the fittest, was that there is some type of faith, some type of higher values, which is why in the Declaration of Independence, which is today's day when we honor the day of Independence Day, they clearly put in, and this was the consensus, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. Why did they need to put that in, especially understanding the challenges of religion? These were people who got burned by religion, and they wanted absolutely a very strong separation between church and state. And yet they put in the word creator more than once. Creator, created equal. Could have said all people are born equal. All people are equal, endowed by the Creator, because it was an understanding, not from a religious context, but from a philosophical context, that despite the fact there's freedom of religion and also freedom to choose no religion, that the fact of the matter is that if you don't subject or you don't accept that there's one Creator that equalizes us all, then anyone can come one day and say, you know what, some of us are more equal than others. Once you say created equal, that changes that. Nobody can come and say, I'm the creator, or I'm closer to the creator than someone else. It's a brilliant step in understanding and guaranteeing that type of freedom. The irony is, interestingly, and I once asked this to someone who's a good friend of mine. He's actually one of the members of American Atheist Association of America. I think it's called American Atheist Association. So AAA, I believe they call themselves. And I said, would an atheist guarantee to a person of faith that same type of right? Here's the right that because that all people are created equal. I say people, it says men, but let's use people, are created equal. That's why you have a right to actually deny God. In other words, because the belief is that God gave every person rights, so you can deny God. Would someone who does not believe in God give every person that equal right to believe or not believe? Interesting twist, right? So the point is that they understood that it was critical to have, together with independence, some bedrock that makes sure that things are not arbitrary. And in the name of independence, we can say, you know what, the majority rules, and some people we don't want to give them independence, or we want to massacre them, or we want to discriminate against them. What protects against that is that there's something greater that gives us that independence. So independence coupled with that type of check and balance of higher authority is critical. Where the French were lacking that, and that's what Adams was concerned about, and that's what ended up happening. Terrible tyranny in the name of these type of freedoms. You know, just as an aside, well, maybe it's not an aside, I always noticed that in insurance policies, there's all the qualifications when they say what they're not covering. So they say they're not covering a hurricane, they're not covering a tornado, they're not covering an earthquake, basically, and all other acts of God. That's the word expression, all acts of God. So I asked once an insurance attorney, why don't they write all acts of nature? Not all the people believe in God. Why suddenly is God being brought into an insurance policy? So we thought about it. He didn't have an answer. Here was my theory. My theory was, well, very simple. If it's an act of nature, you can still have a debate in court who's responsible for that act of nature. The owner or the renter or the person who is being protected or the person who is offering the insurance. Once you say act of God, basically it's the convenient scapegoat. Act of God. I can't be liable for an act of God. So when it's convenient, God is very useful, actually. And I've never heard anyone who's really those radical separation of church and state say, we got to take out those words God. Which also explains, interestingly, another phenomenon which always struck me as being quite powerful. The only currency in the world that carries the word God is American currency. With a strong separation of church and state, it has in God we trust, from a penny to $1,000 bill and all other denominations of our currency. In God we trust. It tells you something. Now, obviously there are people who don't believe in God, and they don't therefore have trust in God. There's, of course, that type of element, and many people like that. I remember writing an article once about faith and atheism, and I wrote that faith, there are many different levels of variations of faith. I received a letter from the president of the American Association of Atheists. I forgot whether that's the actual name. And he wrote to me, 1 second, with all respect, atheists also have variations. There are radical atheists, there are moderate atheists, there are atheist agnostic, there's agnostic atheist. So I wrote a correction, obviously. But I've found that also interesting, the different variations. So the fact of the matter is, everybody understands, even the most radical libertarian who believes in the idea that everybody can just do as they see fit, that we need to have some checks and balances, red lights and green lights, or else we'll just destroy each other. Now, when you have an understanding of what faith is, I am not talking about faith of imposing religion on anyone, but the idea that there are higher truths, like that truth, the truths we find self-evident in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and are endowed with rights, inalienable rights. Nobody can take them away from us. They're God-given or our birthright, endowed by the Creator. That principle is actually what guarantees independence. Now, if someone were to come and impose and say, okay, based on that, let's tell you what type of God you should worship or what religion you should follow, that's not at all acceptable. And I speak from a point of view that many of you may see me as a religious person. I don't like that title, that label called religion, as you probably know, because I mentioned it many times, because I always saw it as a superimposed label. In addition to being human, you're also religious, as if religion and human don't go hand in hand. To me, the idea of having a faith is not a religious act. It's actually something that all of us have. We just don't call it faith. You call it by a different name. That type of either belief in something, in values that you are ready to fight for. When the Wright brothers were convinced that they're going to create a flying ship, which sounds insane at the time, that when you find doctors committed to finding a cure for a disease, a mother who will not take no for an answer, will not accept doctor's diagnosis about her autistic child, she wants to create a connection. Not the miracle that the child is no longer autistic, but she creates, love has the power. Those type of unwavering beliefs, what do you call them if not faith? You can call it fortitude, you can call it unwavering connection. It's semantics. We don't need to use the word faith. I'm not trying to impose that word either. The point is that not everything is based on statistics. Not everything is based on scientific probabilities. There are things that we completely commit to. When you love your child, you love your child. Doesn't matter whether someone says, 1 second, why don't you calculate the risks involved and so on? You can get hurt. Love is part of that. You can be vulnerable. And yes, you could be hurt. And the same is with other truths that we consider self-evident or even deeper than that they're based on a bedrock of something that's beyond just the rational. And the point being is, as much as the rational mind is critical, and as much as it was denied for many centuries, and the Enlightenment reclaimed the open mind, but the mind is one part of who we are. We also have emotions and feelings, and we also have behaviors, and we have cultures, and we have different standards and values, and a whole bunch of things. If you want to define life, life can't be defined just purely by intellect. We're not walking computers. It's a critical component to have an open mind and be an open inquiry, and just don't take things for granted and don't buy into something that someone just sells you. And to be able to be skeptical and challenging, but healthy skepticism. We are actually interested in free inquiry and seeing and probing and evaluating. That's what a good mind does. But a mind that's controlled by fear or controlled by preconceived conclusions, obviously is just being held hostage by whatever makes us comfortable. So there's no question that a mind is critical. But independence of a human being is more than just having an open mind. It's having an open life and looking at things on all angles and realizing that sometimes something may make you comfortable and you may feel is good for you, but may not be good for others, may not be good for the greater good, for the greater whole. And that's what needs balance, not suggesting that it's easy. So Independence Day is really an opportunity to ask yourself the question, how independent are you? How free are you? And hence the title that we use. Are you independent? Are you interdependent, or are you codependent? Now, 3 different expressions. Independent, as I explained at length, relatively, is the idea that you have no fetters. No one's imposing their position upon you. But is that enough in life? What about love and relationships? Shouldn't we be dependent on each other? Not dependent as if we disappear or become annihilated without the other, but the idea of complementation, cross-pollination, individuals collaborating together, whether it's work or in other forms, and above all, in love and relationships. So interdependence, that's a healthy interdependence, like 2 wholes coming together and making something greater, a synergy, that is critical. So you see that independence, as beautiful as it is, needs more. And I would even argue, make a case, that truly independent people can actually truly be interdependent. People who are not really independent are afraid of having too many commitments. It's fear and insecurity that drives them. The Kotzker Rebbe once said, which can easily be applied here, he said, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am not, and you are not. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am and you are. In simple terms, beyond the poetry, it means simply this. If my identity is defined by your identity. In other words, I need to know your opinion for me to be able to form my own. So my whole being is based on juxtaposition to you, or to your parent, or to parents, or to others. Then you're really not existing. It's not about you. You're defined by and your positions are determined by your conformity or the pressure of someone else. You're not independent. And if the other person is the same way, then you have the blind leading the blind, and everybody's just following what others are following. We don't know who, and there's no independence. However, if I am I because I am I, because I have a certain inner sense of confidence and self-esteem, and I have a sense of my purpose in life, and I appreciate my own value in a healthy and humble way, and you are you because you are you, then I will be and you will be, and then you can have true love. So love is not replacing you. Love is complementing, interdependence. Now, codependence is the other extreme, where the dependence becomes so enmeshed and entangled, you lose yourself. And that's what happens often in a relationship where one person maybe is an addict or has some other dysfunctionality, the other person with good intentions trying to help, sometimes try to be a savior, sometimes saying it's always my problem, I'm the problem. And then there becomes a codependency. And codependency is usually the annihilation of self, or to some extent. And that's equally unacceptable. So extreme independence, extreme codependence, and interestingly have something in common. Because true independence without interdependence, without love, can also be a cover-up of a person's own inner insecurities. So they claim to be independent. So the case I am making on this Independence Day is that true independence goes hand in hand with interdependence. In other words, that we complement each other. And that is not compromising, but on the contrary, it enhances one's independence. And this goes back to the point, independence isn't just that I'm a self-made man or woman and I do whatever I want. That sounds very, very free and free-spirited. True independence means that nothing outside of you imposes itself on you. That you live up to the true you. And if one does have faith in God, God created that true you. So even so-called faith in God or dependence on God is not dependence. That even makes you even more independent, because you have God made you and said, I want you to be a unique individual. I don't want you to be someone else. You were born original. Don't become a copy. Now, a faith that's imposed, that's not coming from within, from one's own soul, that can be equally problematic. That's a religion. That can be a dysfunctional religion. That's imposed like anything else is imposed. So the definition of freedom and independence, my friends, is not I can do whatever I want. Because there are a lot of people running around doing whatever they want, but their truth is they're running for their lives. It's out of fear. They can't stay in one place for long. There are people who have millions, if not billions, of frequent flyer miles, but their souls haven't moved an inch in years. And there are people who may be in one place, but they want to be there, and no one's forced them to be there. And they're moving millions of miles spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally. So freedom is that there's no imposition from outside. It's you speaking, discovering your voice, your music, your song. And then it's very easy to coexist with others when you are confident and secure with your own independence, to become interdependent. So I want to wish all of you a happy Independence Day, but with the true meaning of it, to truly find that independent voice, not the one shaped or determined by parents or educators or society or social media or friends. It's great to have all that support, but you need to define yourself from within you, to find the song. Oliver Wendell Holmes, in that sad, sad poem, The Voiceless, says, alas to those that die with their song still inside them. Don't die with your song still inside you. You have a beautiful song, many songs, and they're yours. You were born an original, don't become a copy. That's the message for Independence Day. And that will go hand in hand with our connections to each other, complementing each other like musical songs, musical instruments in one large cosmic symphony. God bless you. Happy Independence Day. Use it well. And may we see each other on only good and healthy occasions. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. Please share, comment, feedback, thoughts, suggestions, exactly as I'm saying, cross-pollinate, cross-connecting with each other, synergizing and complementing one another. Be well and God bless you.